for the millions of you who have student loans, who have gotten through school and come out with a lot of debt, who are trying to keep a job and go to school, trying to figure out if you can go to school and work. I have the perfect person for you because she did all those things. This is one of my star employees, Mackenzie, and we want to talk today about getting into that school, what choice you made, and the loans you might come out with, and the amount of money that it cost you to get this done, and what the benefits and what the downside might be. And Mackenzie, I would think by living it, has become somewhat of an expert. So I'm going to ask her a few questions, and then she's going to tell you all about this. So Mackenzie,
Yes.
tell me, why did you make the choice about school, the school you chose? What made you go to that school, and how did you decide how you could do it financially?
Well, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I wasn't one of those people who knew they were going to be a doctor forever. So when I was deciding to go to school, I had actually just gone straight into working, and I skipped, applying for scholarships and schools and that sort of thing. So eventually I realized I need to go to school and get a degree. And so I chose to go to a 2-year school, and that really worked for me because I could work around it and kind of minimize the debt that I would have after school, as well as kind of finding what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. So that was what really benefited me. I think that for most people, they feel obligated to go to the 4-year school and do what their parents did or do what society tells them to do, and that may not be the right fit for you financially and, otherwise.
So you went to a community college and got a lot of those credits out of the way.
Right. So I went to a 2-year and I applied for FAFSA. And
explain FAFSA.
It is government funding, and sometimes you qualify to have your schooling completely covered. Sometimes it includes housing and some additional things. And sometimes it's only a portion of your schooling that's covered. So you always want to apply for that first because you want to see if you can get essentially free money or go to school for free.
And I think that deadline is always around March 2nd, right? That
yes.
FAFSA, F-A-F-S-A? I think that deadline's March 2nd. Everybody has to look at that.
And so that's the first thing. And so because I applied and was qualified for that, I had essentially no debt from my 2-year degree. Of course, the books aren't always covered, the laptops, those sort of things you have to look at. But for the most part, that route for me worked, and I could work around my work schedule, as you know. So the next thing was deciding where to go from there. And I looked at state schools, I looked at private schools, and online. They have a lot of online programs now as well. And it really is up to you what's going to matter for, do you want to sacrifice income and go to the state schools that are more geared towards people who don't have jobs? Or do you want to go to an online school that is geared towards people who maybe have a family already or are getting a degree to get bumped up in their job? So all of those things were a factor in where I went to school. And I ended up at a private school that was a little bit more costly, but it allowed me to continue working full time and to really
fit it in with your
lifestyle.
Fit
it in with my life, right? And so that was good. I'm glad I made that decision.
So if I remember correctly, this school that you went to not only had a campus, it had a campus far away, but it had satellite schools. Mm-hmm. And Mackenzie could pick what satellite school she went to. And she usually went once a week, and she would have to leave work at about 3:30, and her class would be like 6 to 10. And then they offered some online courses. And also you got credits, and some classes you didn't have to take because of prior experience or
because
your
of the
other schooling.
Right, because of some of the classes qualified from the 2-year that I got. So that was a time saver and a money saver as well.
So what you see is that she had to plot. So she went, when I first met her, she was very young. She's worked for me now for 9 years. Oh my gosh. Anyway, and so she plotted, she went to a junior college, a community college that was close in our community, and she got her classes in there. Then she said, I have to make the leap to a university because I want a degree. Now tell them what degree you got.
So I got a degree in the science of business. I felt that it will transcribe to a lot of different areas if I wanted to go that route. But it's helped as well being a bookkeeper because I can help my clients kind of see things that they wouldn't normally see, especially if they haven't gone to school for that. And we have a lot of entrepreneurs and people who just followed their dream, and so I'm happy to help them with what I now know.
Right. So what's happened is not only did she help herself, help my company, but she helps our clients because some of them have that entrepreneurial spirit, like she said, but they don't really have the basics down, or they didn't go to college for the same thing she did. So she brings a lot to the company. So in your education, if you can pick your passion, and sometimes accounting is nobody's passion, but accounting is a really solid way to make money. And I think you have some bookkeeping and accounting classes as well. Mm-hmm. So she did business. I got a business degree. She has an accounting classes, bookkeeping classes, and a lot of life things that she's learned over the 9 years that she can bring to the company. So now that we know that you need to kind of do those stepping stones like she did, she's a perfect example. And I'm happy to have her actually write up what she did for references on the website. I want to talk to you now about the debt you incurred. So yes. She's going to talk to you a little bit about the debt that she's incurred and how she's taking care of it.
So essentially, like with a state school, you can qualify for grants and the FAFSA. But because I went to a private school, it's a little bit more pricey. And I was left with about 30 grand in debt. And I think that's something that you have to look at and you have to be prepared for, because not all of us have parents who can financially pay off our school loans or our debt. So there's a couple options. Again, like always applying for the grants is your first option. The next thing is really to try to apply for scholarships, because there's people who understand, that you may not have been the high school athlete star or the brainiac, but you're someone who's passionate about going to school, and you should also be, financially supported if you're passionate about that. So scholarships is the next option. There's a fourth option of private loans, which, if you have good credit or your parents are willing to co-sign for you, you can try to get private loans through national banks. Also, a lot of people go through credit unions because the interest rates are a little lower. So with anything, with any interest rate, it starts off with the government rate, and then the banks add their portion of interest on top of what the federal will loan them the money for.
To make money for them.
And then, so the bigger banks that you go to, sometimes the Chase and the Wells Fargo is your best bet because they keep it low for students. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes the credit unions are not looking for as much money and trying to take as much money out of your pocket. So a credit union might be a good way or a good start to look at a private loan. The last thing is, if you do qualify for government student loans, that's an option too. Most or all of my schooling is through government loans, and they're still subleased out to actual banks. They're smaller banks. They're not as well known, but they're able to get you a lower interest rate because it's usually subsidized by the government. And so I have two different interest rates. I'm not exactly sure why, but when you look at your loan, they have 4 different sections in my particular setup, and one of the sections has a 6% interest rate and the others have 3%. So at that point, if you're going to start paying your school loans down, you'd want to start with the bigger one, the bigger interest. And also, just to review and look at, can you consolidate those loans down into a private loan that may give you an interest rate of 3 flat or 4%? And if you do the math, the 6% on the one loan
Yes.
is worth moving to 4% for all 4 loans. So you want to look at that because you don't want to waste unnecessary money. So I think those are most of the bases that are covered. I hope to be paying off my student loan soon.
So what you're seeing is Mackenzie mapped out her future and mapped out that debt. And what I want to say out there is that student loans should never be more than 3%. And I would lobby for this all over the place in this country, in the world. If students are going to school to better themselves and they come out with a debt, the debt should be payable in a quick amount of time. I was looking at some student loans that were at 8%, and once you made a $1,300 a month payment, that you were only paying down like $111 in principal, and the rest was going to interest. And believe me, when a bank or a government gives you a loan, they are trying to make money from you. But in this particular instance, you have to really, really work the system and have to reevaluate. And I know Mackenzie's reevaluated it at least 3 times since she's gotten out and said, okay, maybe a consolidation loan of everything would be better for me too, and get all of my debt in one place, because some at 6, some at 3, one at 8. It's like unwieldy and you can't keep track of it.
And minimum payments of each, and
right.
Are you ever going to get out of it?
Right. And as you know, making minimum payments, that means you're kind of doing the minimum and you're really not getting ahead of the debt. And there's also what we'll go into at another time. There is a program where you can get your school loans granted back to you and paid off. I have someone in my family who did that. She worked with underprivileged children and special needs children, and they granted her the last $17,000 of her loan, and then she was able to pay it off. Yes. So there are programs for that I'm sure Mackenzie's going to look into.
I don't
as
quite
well.
Qualify.
She probably doesn't, but she might be able to volunteer and do bookkeeping at a homeless shelter once a week, and she might be able to get that debt removed. Always look at student loan debt removal, because there's a lot of programs. Mackenzie, my star, thank you so much for sharing, and I'll probably pick your brain a little more in another episode, and we'll probably have you write it up so that people can look at your experience and then maybe model their experience after yours, because I would call what you did a success. Yay. A complete success.